I have with me Rahul Matthan, who can dissect India's new data protection bill for us. Welcome to WION, Rahul.
Thank you for having me.
All right. My first question to you is, we have the fourth draft of the bill. What do you think are the hits and the misses?
So I'd like to think of this not as a fourth draft, but as a brand new first draft, because it bears no relationship to any of the other drafts. And look, I think it's got a lot of bad press for the fact that it is simple, but I actually think its simplicity is its big plus. Because I think for the longest time we've been trying to stand up to the GDPR gold standard. And we must remember the GDPR came after 20 years of data protection in Europe. But we're just starting. And so we need a simple law to get us started. And this law is a simple law. I think there are a few things that I would like to see added. The right to data portability isn't there. It would be nice to have that right in. But by and large, this is what we need at our current stage of development in data protection.
All right. When we talk about digital life, privacy is an important factor. So what measures have been taken to ensure user privacy, especially in times when data leaks have become a common phenomenon?
So I don't think we can, through law, prevent data leaks. There is a provision for data breach notification. There is an obligation to maintain security standards. So if you look at what most data protection laws have, this has all of those things. I think more than data breaches, I think it's more the way in which data is used. And I think if you look at the principles that most international data protection laws have, almost all those principles, as I said, with the exception of data portability, almost all those principles are included in this law. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think it has all the principles. Now, a lot of the critique has been around the level of detail, and yes, I agree. This is not in the level of detail as GDPR is, but as I said, GDPR has evolved after 20 years of actual operation. All the countries in Europe actually have a data protection regulator for the last 20 years. So as a country that's starting out, I think this level of detail is fine. We will need more detail, but we have more time to build that, and I think we're ready to go with the law the way it is.
So, when it comes to data protection, I think heavy fines, it's an important thing to have. So what kind of penalties are there when it comes to data breaches and non-compliance?
So that's the other thing. I think we look at Europe GDPR and we see 2%, 4% of global turnover as the penalties, and we think that that's what we ought to have. But if you look at the history of implementation of GDPR, never has any company been fined 2%, let alone 4% of their global turnover. And even though the fines are very large, most of the fines have been against big tech for whom it's pocket change. And so, I'm not entirely sure that the fines alone are the thing that we need to ensure good behavior. What most of my clients are more concerned about is the reputational fallout of actually having been seen to be doing something which is violative of whatever the data protection law has. So I'm not particularly fussed about the fact that our fines are not at the 2% of GDP level. I think the fines are serious. We've got to also remember that a lot of small businesses would have to deal with these fines, not just big tech, and we've got to have some sort of a balance between the two. But I think the most important thing right now is for us to roll out a regulator and for us to start getting clarity on many of the nuts and bolts of how this new data protection regulation is going to be implemented. And I think the fines and the punishments and all of that will take care of themselves in time.
All right. And it's being said that the new data protection bill has eased the cross-border flow of data. What's your take on that?
Comparatively, yes. I think all the drafts up to now have implemented what we call data localization. It has successively become less and less aggressive in the tone. But this particular draft just says that there will be a list of countries that will be permitted to which data transfers will be permitted, and leaves it at that. So ideally, it's going to be a very simple framing. It's going to very simply say, these are the 2, 3, 5, 10 countries to whom you can't transfer data, and everything else will be, you can just do your data transfers as you're doing it right now. And I think that's what most people don't understand, which is at this point in time, we actually have no such restrictions. And we always tend to compare to the last draft, but the last draft was never enacted. And so whatever comes now is the very first implementation of a data transfer restriction that we will have. The current draft looks like there's going to be very little, and it's going to be just specific to particular geographies that are listed, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. And I think we're not dealing with issues of adequacy, which Europe had to deal with. And once again, at this stage of our development, that's fine. I think at a later point in time, maybe we will bring up issues of adequacy. If we do, we'll deal with it at that time.
All right. And coming to the last question, how do you think this bill compare with EU's GDPR and other data protection laws around the world?
I don't think we need to compare it to EU's GDPR, because as I said, EU's GDPR was enacted in 2016, came into force in 2018, but that was a full 20 years after they had data protection regulations in all the various countries, and it was sort of a conforming of all of these various regulations into a single regulation. We don't have any of this, and so I think if you compare it in terms of detail to GDPR, it is not as detailed as GDPR. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think for our current state of development, this is what we need. We need a law that lists the principles that we need to follow, and that it does, and which allows us the flexibility to then articulate the principles in more and more granular detail, depending on what we're doing it in the context of. Without a doubt, in 10 years' time, we'll need another law. But without a doubt, in 10 years' time, technology would be unrecognizable from what it is today. So that was going to be the fact, whether we had a detailed law or not.
All right. It remains to be seen that how India goes in protecting user data. It was really nice having you on Beyond. Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much.